I'm Brian.
And I'm Reggie.
And this is R&B Talks.
Hi, Brian.
Hi, Reggie. How are you today?
I'm good. About slaughtered an animal last night.
I know. You told me that. Dude, I don't know. I wanted to, when that dog bit Julie in the face, I wanted to sue those people, but Julie was like, no. Like, dude, you don't have an angry animal around people. It's not okay.
Here's the problem with dogs, and this is. I mean, like, look, dogs are very powerful. Some of them, not, the little guys are a little different. But if you have a normal sized dog or a big dog, you got to understand that they are not to be just
taken lightly.
They're there to be respected, I guess.
Yeah.
And
well, at the heart of it, they're animals.
Yeah,
they have an animal instinct.
The thing is, you go to rescue a dog because really, I truly, I'm, as you know, firmly a rescue person. I do not believe that you should. Anyone who wants a pet, if you go buy it from a breeder, I think you're just an idiot. So, but if you don't, and you go to a reputable shelter or a rescue, I think that's the way to go. There's too many of them there, and they're good dogs. Can be. Problem is, you don't know what trauma that dog's been through. Not necessarily. The shelter or the rescue may know some things or whatever, but they don't. They really. I mean,
they may have a small percentage of background, but they don't know everything.
Sometimes they do, and they know. Oh yeah, he was abused, or he was rescued from this or that or whatever. Anyway, but the point being here is that you really don't know. You can go meet the dog, all that kind of stuff. Seems great. You get him home, and then something triggers him, and he's well. That's the way my in-laws were, and I feel so bad for them. But then again, I don't. But like you got to understand when you get a dog. The different environments are different things. Like you gotta understand how kids react with dogs. That has to be closely monitored for a while.
Yeah. To
figure out if there's a problem or not, if they're around other animals or whatever. Cause it can be just, it doesn't take it. I'm telling you that dogs snap in a second. So, my in-laws got a new dog and seemed fine. Right.
Right. So
here's my little eight-year-old down there just cuddling with him and everything. And she went to get up and he hauled off and went to bite her face, right?
Which could have been a trauma reaction.
Something of that. Who knows? But, and if my daughter hadn't been wearing glasses, which he fully got a hold of, she would have got a real, it would have been right there.
Yeah.
So so that triggered a whole series of events, but needless to say, it's just one of those things where, I don't know. I was so mad. And then, I couldn't believe I caught myself. I guess that's what really blows me away is that I was really able to stand down the Hulk.
I'm not shocked.
I don't know, bro.
You're a lot calmer than you think. You're like a giant quaalude.
I don't know about that. Anyway, as much of a dog person as I am, I am not one of those people who look at dogs the same as humans. If there's a choice between a dog and a human, the human wins. Doesn't matter what human it is. Okay, maybe it does. If it was,
that's true.
I don't know. It'd be kind of hard to think. But anyway, that was one thing.
I've been watching a clown show this week, Reggie.
Oh yeah, which one?
Okay, so I've made it a point to watch the Hegseth confirmation, the Gabbard confirmation, and the RFK confirmation, just because I wanted to see. And
yeah, you're right. Rodeo circus.
Well, here's the thing. Trump has picked three very hyper intelligent people that don't rattle under pressure, right? And I watched dozens of Democratic senators, congressmen make absolute fools of themselves. And attack people on completely hypothetical ghost situations.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, the left is off the rails. Like the hut is on fire and they're doing everything they can to keep it from burning down.
I really would like someone to explain to me how, especially the RFK questioning. I think this is revelatory here because you have these senators and stuff. Let's say Elizabeth Warren, for example.
The worst possible example.
Who is, I mean, it's legitimately not hidden about the money she's taking from pharmaceutical companies and big medicine, big pharma. Now, here's how they get away with it, because they'll say, like Bernie Sanders' post that he tweeted out, I've never taken zero from a CEO.
Liar.
Okay, no, he probably hasn't taken $0 from the CEO, but he has money that's been given to him from those companies in one shape or another.
Yes,
and that data is out there. Okay, so that's how they spin all that. But I'm not saying it's just Democrats here too either, folks. I understand that there's some corrupt Republicans as well, because to be honest, we tend to be considered conservative and Republican, but neither one of us would say we are diehard Republican people.
I'm not. No,
we're just diehard common sense.
I'm diehard moral center is what I am.
I mean, it's really not hard.
It's not. It's not. But I think it was. I think at the same note, I think you've seen a brilliant wave of moves from Trump, because he knew what the attack would be from them. And he knew he had to get people who could deal with pressure and deal with being attacked and stay on point. And I'll be honest with you, man, the Hegseth hearing, RFK got a little rattled a couple of times, but I think it was because they were attacking him with such like high levels of garbage.
Yeah,
it just got really out of line.
It was like really.
It really got weird.
But see, I think that's the result of him being a Democrat for so long, and like they really feel like he's a traitor.
Yeah, but with Tulsi Gabbard, I was very impressed with Tulsi Gabbard, because she knew how to cut them off and keep them from stuttering over her. She knew how to like grab control of the conversation and just take it away from them. And
why do you think she's was nominated for that position?
It just makes me, if these people get, nominated or confirmed, it just makes me more excited for what we'll see happen. But anyway, that was just this week. It's like watching a room full of 200 IQ scientists having a fight with mongrels. Like it was utterly the worst thing I've ever seen. Like and again, like Elizabeth Warren, the things that she would say, Mazie Hirono, the things that she would say, the things that, I mean, it just was so stupid. It just was so stupid.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't just, it was like, oh, we would, like that whole Elizabeth Warren thing about, well, I would definitely agree that you want to get rid of corruption. Oh yeah, that's most of, yes. But then it gets to this point where you're just like, would you get a promise, or what was it?
You promise not to sue pharmaceutical companies. No, I will not. If they commit a crime, they will be punished.
Well, and would you commit to the American people to not work for including being a lobbyist for a pharmaceutical, medical, blah, 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 for 4 years and all this kind of stuff? I mean,
sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, but RFK, his response was pretty golden. He's like, they wouldn't have me.
Yeah, they wouldn't have me. They don't want to give me any money.
No.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Now, granted, look, I don't care. Look, I don't really know these guys personally. I don't know any of them. I'm just saying it was just a little. We know Robert Kennedy Jr.'s whole career has been based on suing
pharmaceutical companies
and EPA stuff, all that kind of crap, right? I mean, so and some of it I don't agree with.
Yeah, some of it I don't, some of it I do.
But it's like so I mean, but if you have a guy like that, he's not on the favored list of any of these.
Yeah, nobody's signing him up for membership.
But you would assume though, if he was doing all this and fighting against some of these organizations, that he I don't know, the whole Democratic Party thing just blows me away. But anyway, yeah, it's been wild. The one thing I wanted to say though was I think it's interesting how they're treating Vance's wife. What's her name? Uma or something like that.
Una, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I slipped my mind now, because she's like the most diverse.
Yeah.
First ethnic thing for being the second lady and all this kind of stuff. And there's absolutely nothing.
But anyway, I think the thing that we're seeing right now is a very fearful response to common sense, right, in the government. Canada's freaking out. Mexico's freaking out. China's freaking out. The EU's freaking out. Trump's talking about buying Canada like you buy a condo. Like Governor, Governor Trudeau.
Well, he already resigned, so he'd be out of office before he got made into a state.
Let's hope.
So, Greenland is all about it, dude. They're like, yeah, we'll talk. I think that would be interesting because of all the and I don't even know. I mean, I'm obviously not into it and familiar with like the, mineral rights and all that kind of stuff of Greenland. But
yeah,
I think it would be interesting. It'd probably be more of a, I don't know why, but
it'd probably be more of a U.S. territory.
I don't care though. To be,
yeah.
I mean, look, if we can afford it, that's the problem. I want to.
Here's the thing. I mean, look at how much. I mean, they've stopped 2 things from happening out of the 30 he stopped and saved the country $84 million by Doge stopping 2 things from happening. They gave $50 million. They were going to give $50 million to Gaza for condoms. Dude, I don't know what you're doing over there, but that's a little small place. $50 million is a little much.
Not just that. Why are we in that business?
Yeah. And
No.
34. And then there was a list. You can go online and look it up. There's a list of programs that Doge is stopping. One is like a petting horses program that they're giving like $22 million to. Like, what are we doing? Right.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I'm one of those guys who said get the government out of as much as possible. Like, you don't know, leave us alone. Let us manage, our own lives and all that kind of stuff as much as possible. Yes, there still has to be a rule of law, but good Lord, we don't need all these. It's just not a social state. It's not a socialist state. It's not. It should never be.
Never has been.
Anyway, it's interesting how the diversity. I want to get back to this because I think it's important. The whole way they've treated, Mrs. Vance, and the complete disregard for all this. No, it just seems absurd, and I really think it's. I really think it's just Usha. There you go. I knew it was Uma or Usha, something like that. Okay.
All right. Sorry, I just had to get that.
So I mean, I just think it shows that. I really think you have an hypocrisy that goes on everywhere, but like, the whole DEI thing is just a delusion, especially when they talk about illegal immigrants like they do. I think that just shows kind of how they think of immigrants in general.
Well, it came up again in the confirmation about, illegal immigrants and their, which by the way, I'm a huge fan of Kash Patel, by the way, but, Kash Patel talking about immigration and the Democrats talking about who's going to serve us our coffee, who's going to wash our vegetables. I'm like, do you hear yourself?
Yeah.
When you say utterly insulting, blatantly ignorant manure like that, do you hear how petty and elitist you sound when you say something like that? Like, it's impossible for me to understand at all why any immigrant would gravitate towards a group of people that thinks that they're, and I say this because I've heard them say it, that they're literally blueberry and bean pickers. Like, how terrible is your look on immigrants when that's who you think they are?
Yeah. And I mean, why does that have to be them to do that, for one?
Yeah.
Is it just because you get away with paying them a low wage, or do you just think that they're not capable of anything else?
It's because if you allow them to draw benefits off of the government, they'll vote for you.
No, I know that. So, I'm just saying, but like the way they view the immigrants and stuff is completely a pompous and arrogant attitude, and it's only for a specific purpose, and that is to draw people more into the socialistic system. Period. It's ridiculous.
It is.
So, but I will say the birthright citizenship thing. Let me say this. I don't care. I'll just be honest. I really don't care.
It doesn't amount to anything.
I don't care. Like, of all the issues that I want to tackle and everything, that's really on no. I don't really even.
That's at the bottom of the list.
I don't really care. I don't care if some kid is born on American soil and is now a citizen because they were, even though their parents were immigrants. Okay, fine. I don't care. I know now I know the reasons behind this. Don't get me wrong, and don't freak out. I know there's reasons behind that, and like it does such and such. But I mean, in the scope of things, that's kind of low on my list of cares. Now, I don't live in a border state either, so maybe that's part of the problem. But
we do live in a group of states that is heavily affected by immigration.
Yes, we do.
We live in farming community. Kentucky's a horse community, and a lot of those farms hire illegal labor because it's cheaper. I'm not saying, I'm not like rallying to do anything against anybody, but the facts are the facts.
I used to work for a horse farmer, or I'm sorry, not a horse farmer. That's a terrible thing, stupid way to say it. He had facilities he boarded horses and had, all this stuff, and barns that cost hundreds of $1,000s made out of, old tobacco barn wood and all this crap.
Beautiful barns,
freaking beautiful, beautiful. He had them all built. Very wealthy man, right? But he could not get enough help. People just would not do the work. Now, granted, it's not high paying work, but it doesn't pay, he said it doesn't matter if he paid the same amount as some of the other like labor jobs or whatever. People just didn't want to do the work. They wouldn't, he couldn't get enough people to do it. So, and he never, I guess, said that he had illegal. He never said that, by the way, and he may not. I mean, but it was really. I know it's really difficult for them to get the labor they need to do the work they need done.
Well, here's what I think. I think that no government has ever existed to make itself smaller, and the reason why a wage is not livable is not because the person earning it is not earning enough. It's not enough because the government doesn't protect the wage itself. Like when your dollar's taxed 4 to 5 times, your dollar should be taxed once. You should be taxed when you're paid, if you pay taxes, and after that, there shouldn't be any more taxes taken out of your money.
Yeah, I agree.
And the reason that somebody can't survive on a $15 an hour wage is because our government destroys it. And I think honestly,
little return.
Well, but I honestly think that if you got the government out of it, if you either went to a single tax, you'd see a lot of American workers go to some of these more laborious jobs because they would actually earn something out of it. But let me be clear, if you're working in a very labor intensive job and you're being paid a moderate wage that gets taxed to death, you're still in the poverty level of what you bring home.
Well, this brings up a whole thing about really where it's like your family cash flow.
Yeah.
And like versus how that's used versus in a socialistic environment versus a capitalistic environment kind of thing. What I mean by that is like you whenever you start talking about this, everybody's going to throw up and say, well, it's capitalism's fault that the health industry is so expensive and like why we pay, 1,000% more for medications and all this stuff, or that we any number of things that you hear when you hear this. But okay, here's the problem. Yes, there are vast amounts of greed and power mongering corruption in these like corporations and organizations that do.
It's greater than they even understand.
Yeah. But understand that there's no one that argues that that's not happening. Okay. That's not a capitalism fault of capital. That's not a fault of capitalism.
That's a fault of government.
Yes. Government regulation or deregulation or
any combination of the two.
Power placement has led to the elevated state of how that all works. Now, it's true that if you look at typical corporate America, the CEO now makes like whatever it is, 400% more than like the lowest paid employee. The disparity of income between the lowest paid versus highest paid is pretty outstanding right now. That it used to not be near that. It's like way that now. Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
That I don't agree to necessarily the large amount of but there should be a disparity. Don't get me wrong.
There should absolutely be a disparity.
So, but it's how you look at the whole situation and say, well, where is that really? What's the fault of that? What can we do to help close the gap or make it less or whatever. And it's not more government programs, it's less. I think that's really the answer that we had before, when we were so wealthy, when we were doing so well as a country, even not being a global system, but it was bound around personal responsibility, entrepreneurship, having you be able to do what you want with your state. The government wasn't really in your business, not hardly at all. So absolutely. That's really where we got to get back to. If you
and as far as the terms regulation and deregulation, they're two sides of the same coin, because you can regulate something to make it corrupt, or you can deregulate it to make it corrupt. So a lot of these people want to hang on to this term regulation and deregulation. You can be crooked on either side, guys. It's not that one is better than the other. I can go into a company and put down regulations and use fine print and stuff like that to really damage the company and take away from the people working there. Or I can go in and say, oh, well, you guys have been regulated and you're doing well. Well, we can do much better if we just deregulate all this. And then all of a sudden you've got all this semi-immoral, illegal activity going on. So, a lot of these politicians like to throw that word out there, regulation or deregulation. Neither one really means you're any more safe.
Yeah.
It's just whichever way you choose to manipulate that situation. So,
yeah. Well, and let me just say that, a lot of, especially with healthcare, people say, well, it's too expensive. Look at Canada doesn't have to pay anything. Or if you go to the UK, if you use their system, you don't have to pay anything. I do not want to wait a year and a half to go see a specialist, or like 4 months to go see a doctor.
Amen, brother. Amen.
Okay. Now that doesn't mean the pricing needs to change, or doesn't need to change. I mean, it just means that the solution isn't that way just to solve one problem.
Yeah.
And it's not like I'm talking to you about stuff I've seen on social media. I mean, I used to go to Canada quite often. And there was one time in particular where I walked into a conference room full of, I don't know, I guess there was 30 people in this conference room. They were all having a discussion. I did not initiate any of this, by the way. I was just listening on all, because honestly, we have corporate rules that say I can't engage in like corporate or political or religious conversations with customers, right? So I don't get into any of that with anybody when I'm working. Anyway, I walk into the room and they're all just one after the other just talking about how much they were upset about this, because one of them had just tried to go do something because they had this problem and they couldn't get it fixed, and they were sitting in their chair looking miserable. They were like, why is that? And he was like, well, I can't go to that, blah, blah, blah. Anyway.
Got to wait 4 months.
All of them were talking about how long it took. And it took me, 6 months to go see this, or it took me, 2 months to go see this, or I couldn't get into this or this. I went to the ER and there was like a 6-hour wait or something. A 12-hour wait or something. It's crap like that, dude. I mean, holy cow. No, I don't want that. So anyway,
sorry, we got this is a bottomless pit that we can crawl down in. So
there's one thing I saw this week. It's this what do they call it? It's a new Bible. Okay? And I can't remember the name, but I gotta find it.
It's a new Bible.
It's a new, a different translation of the Bible kind of thing. Like
I'm always leery of stuff like that, man.
Well, but it's not okay. Look, here's why I'm saying there's legit translations always going on with the Bible. I think are awesome, and they need to keep going
for sure.
Here's one where the video for it, I think it's called the Upside Down KJV or something like that, right? Or KJV Upside or something. I can't remember what it was called, dude. It's something weird like that, right? And the pastor or leader, I can't remember what they called his title, to be fair, because I only watched the video once. I should have went back and took notes, but I didn't. Said that one of the key purposes and objectives of this Bible was diversity.
Ugh.
Specifically has notes.
I'm so sorry.
Specifically has notes about like race and like sexual gender identities and all that stuff. Specifically has all that in notes, right?
Burn it.
So can we, if you have not watched our show before, let me affirm this.
Yeah.
That is pure and utter garbage, to quote Mr. Kirby.
Poppycock. Like, it's all that's all. Look, dude, I get it, right? Look, I'm the first guy in line that'll tell you. I don't really. I will tell you what I believe. I will stand by my beliefs. If you want to go buy a garbage Bible that basically rails against everything that actual biblical truth is about, you know what? If you got the cash and you want to burn it, go ahead. But this is just where it's going, guys. I mean,
this is a product of the culture influencing the church.
Yeah,
where it should
there should be zero culture in church.
Not that there should be zero.
What I'm talking about is that like zero radical culture. Like there shouldn't be any. The church is not about radical culture. We are radical in the sense that we believe in something, and we are a very small percentage of the world. And I believe that it is radical that I stand in our current society. It's a very radical stance that you and I take to stand on our biblical principles. Lord knows I've caught enough flack, and so have you. But the thing that I'll tell you is this. It goes back to the thing I've said 50 times. It's so friggin' easy to be liberal.
And and on this subject, I have to say I did state something at a broad term this week on social media with an argument that I had that I really want to not retract, but I need to clarify. I do not believe all Catholic churches or Catholics are necessarily heretics. I'm
going to say something real quick.
Yeah.
I apologize. I had a very sour stance on Catholics for a long time.
Yeah.
As I've gotten to know many people who are traditional Catholics, I have a different respect for them now that I've gotten to know them. So
the Catholic Church as a whole organization, though, is heretical. Okay? Let me clarify that. I just want to make that statement. I was in a discussion on Facebook, and I did say, congratulations, you've made me feel more strongly about the Catholic Church than previously. But it's not the Catholic Church at whole. It's the any organization who calls themselves Christ following people, whether that's Catholic or Protestant or whatever, and you have let the woke influence dominate your teachings, you are heretical. So there it is. Sure. Also, too, let me just make that, because I know I did this because most of you don't, and I don't really do this on Facebook much or anything, but Jesus did not come to earth to show you how to love. Let me say that again. Jesus did not come to earth as his prime focus to show you how to love. That is not what the purpose that Christ came down. Yes, I'm saying that. Now, was love part of what he did? It absolutely was. And he defined what love was. A couple, very, very good, very well. God, listen to me. I can't talk today. But
it's all right. I crashed the mic twice.
His purpose was not to show you how to love. He brought the kingdom of heaven to earth. He fulfilled the law that was established that we could not. He rescued, ransomed, redeemed, and restored humanity for those that would pick up their cross and follow him. That was his purpose, not to show you how to love. And by the way, love does not mean complete and total acceptance of sinful behavior. It means that you handle that differently, and you, out of love, speak to those concerns for your brother or sister on earth. It does not mean that you say everything you do is cool, you are completely accepted, and woo, you throw your head. No, that is not love. That is actually evil.
Incarnate evil.
So let me just make that the woke death cult is infiltrated lots of churches in America, including some Catholic dioceses and all that kind of stuff, including a certain bishop. Hello, and all that stuff. So there you go. I just wanted to make that clear, since that argument I had on Facebook revealed once again that I was right.
Speaking of sin,
by the way,
I know. Speaking of sin, tobacco.
Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about tobacco uses today, because we have state bills, including our own Indiana here.
Yes.
That are trying to banning the sale of tobacco products to individuals born after specific dates. That date in Indiana they've declared is June 30th, 2004. So if you're born after June 30th, 2004, you would no longer be able to buy tobacco, no matter how old you are. Okay. Which is really creating a permanent prohibition. Really, it's like after that you can't buy tobacco. So what that brings up, I wanted to really talk about this because if you go try to find, and this is what my experience has been again this week when I've gone and researched it, probably the first like 15 freaking search pages are full of just nothing but
garbage.
Oh my gosh.
Hot garbage.
Well, here's the thing. Here's what you got to understand. A lot of there's been so much research into tobacco usage and secondhand smoke and all this kind of stuff, but they kind of lope everything together in general. And there's not really a lot of cigar or pipe smoking people that are exclusively cigar or pipe smoking people that really can create a statistical relevance in really a broad study of things. Now, you can make some statements like it's not like I don't think tobacco has inherent, it's like guilty free and there's nothing wrong with it. I think there's definitely there's some things to do, but like nicotine isn't necessarily the enemy. And I think that's what a lot of studies try to do. And
there's medical proof that nicotine is actually good for the brain, good for the nervous system. There's a lot of research out there that says that nicotine is a very powerful, it's just as powerful as caffeine is in recovery. Right. So,
well, because here's the thing. They don't get into eating habits of the people who are smoking these things. They don't get into like their lifestyle choices or what environments they're in or whatever it is. It's just like, hey, these people are these are the people that we have that are smokers. They're the current smokers that are that were smokers or they're daily smokers. They have all this data, but then you don't get into the nitty gritty about like, okay, well, they had this cancer. Well, did their family have a genetic disposition towards cancer? Did they eat like McDonald's for?
And let's also be clear: we all have a cancer gene in us.
We do.
Like it's not. There's no rock solid proof that anything outside of abuse will trigger cancer. And I'm a guy talking that my grandmother passed away because she smoked 3 packs of cigarettes a day, and she smoked like if she didn't smoke, there would be no oxygen. Like she worshiped at the altar of tobacco. Like it was not okay.
So we're going to have two layers of this conversation, right? So there's a, I want to talk about the biblical, if there is, or what the Bible would tell us about tobacco usage. And the other is just what the data from all kinds of, respected institutions say about
absolutely
tobacco uses and everything else. So I think one of the big things for me is getting into because this is one of them too that gets me riled up, especially from some like legalistic Baptist people who just like say you are going to hell if you drink alcohol or if you smoke or do any of this other stuff, which I find completely and totally asinine.
Well, the Bible's very clear. Alcohol is not sin. Drunkenness is a sin. To be drunk and disorderly and acting irreparably is a sin. Not the alcohol itself.
I want to talk about that for just a minute. Okay. And it's, you don't, because you got to understand during the feasts that they had in the Jewish culture, a lot of people got drunk.
Yep.
And it does say in the Old Testament, when it references these things, it says they feasted. And sometimes it says they got intoxicated or drunk or something. It uses words like that, but it doesn't say anything after that. It doesn't reference that in necessarily during these feasts where that was evil and condemned. Okay. So I think there's a point to this where like we have to look at the whole picture and go, okay, it's better if you don't get drunk.
Yeah.
And especially I think if you're considered a drunkard,
for sure,
that is definitely not cool from the eyes of God, as Bart. And we got to understand what we're going to classify being holy or not, right? So, but if you had a huge party at your house, celebrating something. You were at a feast that was technically like a party feast or whatever.
Birthday party, anniversary party,
whatever. And you had a couple too many or whatever, but you weren't like,
smashed.
Yeah. I mean, that's not really something I think that you can quote unquote say you just did a sinful thing. You partied and had a good time. You had too many, but you didn't get slobbering where you weren't control yourself. This is the key. Control yourself.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
One of the key things here for us is that if we look at how the Bible displays substances, because that's what it is. The Bible doesn't say anything about tobacco, by the way. I mean, there's nothing.
Yeah. The Bible has zero explicit language, verbiage,
but
reference to tobacco being a sin, nor to alcohol being a sin.
Right. It does talk about idolatry. Okay. So that's what happens when you let a substance of some sort get between you and your relationship with God, and that's really what we're talking about here. You look to that substance rather than look to Christ. So when we see in like Ephesians 5:18, and do not get drunk with wine, for that is dissipation, but be filled with the Spirit. So don't let being drunk replace being filled with the Spirit. Okay?
Yes.
All things are lawful for me, but not all things are profitable. All things are lawful for me, but I will not be mastered by anything. 1 Corinthians 6:12. Mastered by anything, right? Don't let a substance be a master over you. If that substance becomes a priority, it has now become idolatry.
Well, I would say that a great cultural word to use for idolatry would be addiction.
Yeah, exactly. If you're addicted, yeah.
If you have an unhealthy addiction to anything, smoking, drinking, pornography, whatever that might be, if you're replacing stoic times of contemplation and meditation and prayer with drinking or whatever it is that you're doing, you're committing a sin. But it's not the tool that's used during that. It's the inability of yourself to control yourself, right? That's the sin. So
right. I mean, because here's the thing. Again, 1 Corinthians 10:31, do all to the glory of God, right?
Yeah.
So whether then you eat or drink or whatever you do all to the glory of God.
Absolutely.
Okay. So, and this is why, especially there's like, even Spurgeon was a cigar guy, loves his cigars. We're talking Spurgeon here, dude, Prince of Preachers. And he spoke on it often. Not often. He addressed the congregation a couple times, I think. I can't remember what it was, but I've read both of those sermons. Lewis, huge pipe smoker guy.
Yeah.
Tolkien.
Yep.
Huge pipe smoker guy.
Yeah.
Right? Lots of very historical figures that were considered geniuses or theological scholars or whatever we can have been that way. They did. And none of them seem to have the discernment to say, oh man, what I'm doing right now. And these are some of the people we look to for scholarship, right? And if we're going to say that it's a sin to do tobacco, then we really got to look back at those people and say, oh man, maybe
we shouldn't be listening to those people.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So that's kind of where that's another point. Here's something. What you see in 1 Corinthians 10:13, this is I was really caught by this. No temptation has overtaken you, but such as is common to man. But God is faithful, who will not allow you to be tempted beyond what you are able. But with the temptation will provide the way of escape also, so that you will be able to endure it.
Yes. 1 Corinthians, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Let me explain. Now, look, you can look at the commentaries and stuff, but they don't really go where I'm going. So let me just preface that for one. Here's the deal. God's put all these plants and animals on this planet for a reason. And some of those are very medicinal purposes. And I think tobacco is one of those, can be used in a kind of a medicinal manner. For instance, when he says, But with temptation will provide you escape also. So in other words, like for me, if I get really wound up, okay, because I'm a passionate person, I get a little bold and sometimes, and if I sit there and I sit down and I light a pipe up and that calms me down.
Yeah. Brings me for me to light up a cigar. It brings me to a calm, stationary place. And let's be clear, like I told you before, I smoke maybe 1 to 2 cigars a week.
Now that doesn't replace prayer.
No,
it doesn't replace anything. But if it allows you to better focus on those things or whatever, how can that be a sin? That's not, right?
No.
So I just want to say that. I mean, you know, you can overdo these things. And there is, I think, actual science that says there's some elements of the products and stuff that can be considered.
Well, you look at what Big Tobacco did from about 1985 until the early 2000s. I mean, you look at the rate of death from tobacco use up until the early 80s, it was fairly low simply because everything wasn't hyper chemically altered, right? I think a lot of things, food industry, tobacco industry, alcohol industry, if you look at what's going on in those industries, you know, and if you think about it, something very interesting that I've read, you know, we're seeing all these Delta 8 and Delta 9 products popping up inside of places. Those are very chemically altered. Those are man-made versions. And I'm not a marijuana advocate at all, so let's be clear. I'm not. But what I'm saying is there's a very disturbing trend of, you know, people wanting to vilify something before they do all of the research to find out why it is what it is. I mean, Big Tobacco basically came out and said, we purposely altered tobacco to make it incredibly addictive in cigarettes. You know, and is that me saying that there's an excuse for someone who's addicted to cigarettes? No, but I'm saying there are mitigating factors that happen that can greatly heighten your ability to become addicted to something.
Sure.
You know, and one of the things I will tell people too is, you know, really think about, you know, I think about my grandfather. For years, he was a cigarette smoker. Came home one day, pulled 2 packs of filterless cigarettes out of the cabinet, crushed them and threw them in the garbage. Never smoked a cigarette again, but loved a good pipe with a good cherry tobacco. Usually did it at night after work. He would come home and sit in his chair, pack his pipe, and just calm down, like just kind of settle, right? And then after that one bowl of tobacco, get on with life. I think a lot of this is, you know, and this goes back to this thing. And it's funny. I mentioned we're talking about this because I had another conversation with somebody the other day, and they're like, "Well, what denomination of church do you go to?" And I was like, "I just go to church." And they're like, "Well, are you a Baptist?" I'm like, I'm a man of God. I'm not a Baptist. I'm not a Presbyterian. I'm not a Methodist. I'm none of those things. I don't believe in traditions of the church. I believe in biblical principle, and that's it. Like, and don't get me wrong, there are some churches that I've been in that they had traditions that I enjoyed, right? But I think the vilification of tobacco and alcohol in the church is not biblical. It's that we need to push into your life a visible form of sin, and even if we have to make it up to bring you to that point of guilt, we're going to do it. And I think that's really what we're speaking to a lot right now is there is no biblical literature anywhere that says alcohol and tobacco are a sin, but there is biblical literature that says addiction and drunkenness are sins.
Now let's clarify something here too. Okay. If you look at tobacco or alcohol as you shouldn't be doing them at all, then you need to look at every substance that way and apply that same thing to every, including sugar, food, or any kind of food or some kind of soda or anything, any substance that you intake. You need to apply the same thing to it.
And let's be clear: if you're eating 20 Hostess cupcakes a day, if you smoke a cigar a week, I could care less about your cigar. I'm worried more about the fact that you're going to die from, diabetes and eventually leading to heart disease because of your gluttonous behavior. Addiction's different for everybody. Everybody has a different trigger, food, whatever. But
there's not, okay, but I do want to say that there's not a zero risk or something from tobacco or whatever.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, but the studies that there's pages and there's so much studies on this that talk about smoke, secondhand smoke, all this stuff. And what they do though is majority of them lump everything together. So you have people who have smoked 8 packs a day, who inhaled everything, and those are the same as a premium cigar guy who has like 1 or 2 a week or something.
It's not
or a cigar or a pipe smoker. It's like they label them all in the same way. There's very, very little data and statistical relevance on actual premium handmade cigars or pipe tobacco usage in that kind of thing for that way. Agreed. There's very, very little bit. And honestly, the percentage of the population that does these things on a regular basis is really low anyway. So here's a good example. There was one study from the National Academics of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine, and it was this, I forgot when it was put out, but it was premium cigars, patterns of use, marketing, and health effects. Right. The thing is, it does indicate that there's a difference between like a premium cigar versus other types of cigars or cigarettes kind of thing. But here's the deal. There's only 0.6% of those who reported smoking a premium cigar brand in the past 30 days were under the age of 18, which is like elusive to the whole thing about use getting to cigars. But there's not a lot of data, right, for these people. And what this means is we really need some clarification from, if the FDA can be non-corrupt and everything, some qualification behind some of this stuff. Because premium cigar smokers tend to smoke less frequency when compared to smoked cigarettes or whatever. And the chemical compensation standpoint, right? The premium cigars have different stuff in them than like machine-made stuff.
Yeah.
Okay? So it's the same thing with food. Like processed food, way worse for you and oftentimes terrible for you rather than unprocessed natural food. It's the same thing with tobacco products. Okay? One other study that I found, the National Library of Medicine, talking about the mortality risk, it does say, hey, it looks like there's a significant, hey, if you smoke this, that you have a higher all-cause mortality risk than never tobacco users. However, analysis of specific causes of death among cigar and pipe smokers were limited by modest sample sizes. And again, you're not talking about diet, not talking about lifestyle, any of that kind of stuff to add more to this picture because it's all part of this.
It all counts.
Right? Now, one thing I couldn't find, and I was looking for because C. Everett Koop, did have some stuff during his time as Surgeon General where he did mortality studies and went into some depth about things and showed that the mortality rates of people who did cigar or pipe smoke
far less,
that were actually even the mortality rate was less than a non-smoker. And I'll tell you why, because and here's what they don't say in these like lung association, cancer associations, all these stuff. They have look, you have to understand they have a specific agenda. They want to draw more attention to cancer and lung problems so that they stand out more, and they're funded by that purpose. Okay. All their resources is to that purpose. Anyway, and I'm not saying they do bad science. I'm just saying that that's where they're trying to go. Okay. When you're trying to go somewhere, you can eventually get to that point. The problem is it doesn't go into the positive that happens about occasional cigar or pipe smoking.
Yeah.
So there's not a, we know stress is like one of the worst things for your health. It is probably and I think it's number one as far as things go.
Well, if you look at the statistics, if you take the person's cortisol levels from the 60s and 70s and you compare them to the person's cortisol levels from current times, people are producing 3 to 5 times more of that cortisol stress hormone now than they were producing then. And I think that comes from more from not stopping and taking time to maybe participate in something that relaxes you and brings you down. You know, a lot of people are like, you know, I had this conversation. Well, Brian, if you smoke a cigar, it's going to stimulate you. I've never smoked a cigar and felt stimulated, like energetically stimulated afterwards. I'm always very calm and cool and collected, and my thoughts are centered. You know, there's this whole thing of wanting to. Let's be correct. I don't agree with you on one thing. I don't believe good science is being done. And the reason I don't believe good science is being done is because
I'm being nice.
There's a very slanted view of these things because there is money to be made in that slanted view. And what I mean by that is very simply, let's take heart disease, for example, is just one thing. Women in the world, especially in the United States, die at a 5-to-1 rate of heart disease as opposed to men. Yet the focus of heart disease is put on men because it's committed to being a fear-mongering type of thing. Yeah. And I think it's the same thing with tobacco. I know, we talked about this earlier, I know some old farm dudes that they're smoking some cheap dollar cigars and they are inhaling those bad boys, and they're smoking 4 or 5 of those things a day. And whereas you and I don't want to call us aficionados because there's a lot that goes into that, but you and I do it for the enjoyment of the taste, for the enjoyment of the flavor, for the enjoyment of the calmness that we get from it. We don't inhale.
Right.
I think, but here we are. We swept it all together here. Everybody who uses any tobacco product, you're going to die. That's the dumbest thing ever said in the history of dumb things ever said.
I just think look, it's one of those where it's a use responsibly type of thing.
Yeah.
If you're a Christian person, don't let it become the focus of your anything. That it should, if it does anything, it should help you draw closer to it, not farther away from it. That's really the key here with any substance, whether it be food or whatever, or activity, by the way. I mean, even if you sit there, like I know some people who they worship working out.
Yeah. I did for a long time.
That's not okay either.
I did for a long time.
You can't, that's also idolatry, right? You're putting something in place of God to handle. Anyway, look, the key here is that you have to look past the agendas of these studies, and you have to understand that there's more going on when these studies are being done than just trying to find the science of it. There is more to it. And unfortunately, it's so, especially with tobacco, there's like, and I don't, I was trying to figure out like what I could say, like, what do I think the cause of that is with tobacco specifically? And I think because you have some diehard cigarette usage out there that's really hurt a lot of people.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like I know, even when we were growing up, Brian, like it wasn't uncommon. You go to a restaurant and you be in the, you have a smoking, non-smoking section, and,
which was a joke,
all this kind of stuff. But and it was like, you had to be around it a lot, and you got burnt by it because it was like you didn't want to be around a bunch of cigarette smoke stuff. And I never did. I hated it.
I've actually never smoked a cigarette.
No, I tried a cigarette. I hated it. I hated it.
Terrible.
It was disgusting.
And I grew up in a family where every single person in my family smoked.
Yeah. So, I mean, and look, back when I started playing when I was playing music a lot in bars and stuff, I mean, gosh, you'd be in the bar. It would you would stink something fierce when you left the bar because it's all the smoke and everything else. But it really, it was part of it. It was whatever. And I don't know if you judge that really, because I mean, it's what it is. So I guess I'm just saying, I really think that it can help you more than it hurts you if you're knowledgeable, if you're responsible, if you're still trying to glorify God in some way, and this is not your replacement for that. That's really where I'm at. And the biblical standpoint does not really, that it doesn't disagree with that. Okay.
Not at all.
And I will say that You do need to look in your life though and say, hey, is there a substance? Is there a food? Is there a drink? Is there an activity that is a replacement for God? Yeah. Is it really idolatry that I'm getting into with whatever I'm doing or whatever I'm intaking? That's a real good question we should all ask. I mean, you
should always take an inventory, right?
Yeah.
There should always be I try to do it once a month. I try to take an inventory of where my behaviors are and what I'm investing myself in, and here's what it really boils down to. And this is to the core of why we started this podcast. Self-control is not a bad thing. And as men, which is the majority of who we're speaking to most of the time, but really this subject kind of covers all people. There is so many rewards that come from self-control.
Oh yeah.
The fact that I control my food intake, the fact that I exercise, not because I'm addicted to exercise, but because, I want to be a strong, capable person who, when it comes time to go out into the world and do the work that God calls me to do, I can go do it. I think that one of the worst things I think ever happened in churches was the church potluck, because I feel like that's an excuse for people to get together and be gluttonous. Now, if you want to get together and have a meal, that's cool. But when you got, Reverend Bob in the corner on his 7th piece of pie, hey, Bob,
yeah, but I mean,
you're supposed to be setting the example.
But you're doing a celebratory kind of thing with your gathering together and everything. I don't really have a problem with somebody like indulging in some whatever in the revelry.
But I think indulgence and overindulgence, there's a fine line between the two.
Yeah, I mean, being
right.
I think you can apply drunkenness to pretty much anything.
Yeah, you can apply gluttony, anything like that.
But it's just but it's the same. I mean, again, I look at the same way the Jewish feast did. I mean, okay, so yeah, I mean, you got a little bit too much. All right,
I'll be honest. When Reggie smokes meats, I'm gluttonous because I like to smoke.
But we're not committing idolatry. We're not replacing God or something else with a food.
Yeah,
or with a
I don't have
a
picture of a brisket on the front of my Bible.
No, I mean, it's just. But that's what I mean. We get it's just not one of those things we should be. That shouldn't be a freaking mainline topic of anybody here.
Yeah. I think that. But what I think we get from all this is simply this: anything in moderation that's not a distraction from your purpose, which should be to glorify God and to work on being a better person and a better husband or wife or father or mother. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I don't think there's anything wrong with enjoying a cigar, or I don't think there's anything wrong with sitting down and, enjoying a glass of wine. I don't think there's anything wrong with an occasional drink. I don't think I think, again, these are not biblical mandates. These are church traditions that tell you that this is a sin.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, what I find in all this is a very sad and broken need to avoid personal responsibility by making excuses for these things. And what I think the message that we're trying to get across is, if God isn't telling me it's a sin, I'm not going to call it a sin. And literally, if you go to the biblical text says nothing.
I'll wrap this up like this. Would Jesus create a substance that was sinful?
I don't think so.
No, absolutely not. He cannot do that. That would contradict his whole being.
Yeah.
If he created wine from water
and partook in it,
the substance therefore is not sinful. He's not going to do that. That would contradict his existence, right? That's what I'll say, right? Out of all things you should take from this, understand that.
Absolutely.
Right? That would contradict his whole existence. That would not happen.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Anyway, so here's some helpful things to kind of help with how you should regulate this. I look at, and here's how I deal with this. Okay. If I find myself, and if I ever think I need a bowl full of tobacco. I need a cigar. That's where I'm trying. Like, that's at the point where I will say, that's a problem.
Got to take a break.
Yeah.
Got to reassess.
Yes. If it's like, well, you know what? I feel I'm that if I'm like, I just, I want to enjoy a cigar. I'll have a pipe right now that while I'm doing research or whatever towards this and whatever. That's a different thing. Okay.
Altogether.
That's how I deal with this. I don't need a pipe. I don't need a cigar. I've gone every once in a while, and this is what I do. Every once in a while, I'll put the tobacco stuff away, and I just won't do it for like a week or two. I do it not all the time, but I don't know. I can't even explain it. It's just every once in a while when I feel like, maybe I should just give it a break here in a minute just to make. I do. Just to make sure I've got my ducks in a row. That's how I deal with it.
To make sure I'm in control.
Yeah. So, that's the thing, folks. It's just making sure you're in control. You have discipline over something that you are doing in your life.
Yeah, for sure.
So, all right. Well, I think that's all the time we have for today.
Yes, I think
Brian.
we've thoroughly covered this subject.
Indeed. So if you have any topic suggestions, please leave it there. We have we're working on the guest thing, by the way. That's in the works, trying to figure that out as far as getting schedules and how we're going to do that kind of stuff. We'll be doing that soon. And I think, I don't know what next we have coming up. There's one, I want to talk about the once saved, always saved thing.
Yeah. I'd also like to talk about worry.
Worry's a good one.
Yeah.
We've kind of mentioned that a little bit in the past, but maybe dealing with that directly for a little bit.
Directly with what the Bible says about worry. Right.
And so there's my dog Max, if you heard it. And so, yeah, we're R&B Talks.
Like, subscribe, comment, argue. I'm Brian.
I'm Reggie.
See you guys.
Bye-bye.